So welcome to our 2023 Magical and Astrological forecast. We're so excited to be doing this. This is our first real in-depth forecast in this way. Thank you to Mariana, astrologer extraordinaire, for being up for this and for being such a well of wisdom for our community. Yeah, anything we want to say just before we jump into the forecast?
I mean, not really. I think it's really good to be here. I'm a little bit nervous to talk about all this, if I'm completely honest. Because and I think I'll mention it as we go forward. These are the energies, some of these energies none of us has experienced consciously, or even generations of us hasn't experienced this, about like before us experienced some of these energies. So this is something like this buzzing excitement that I have about the year ahead, and I'm just like ready to start unpacking.
Yeah, I love it. I will mention that we are recording this live, so we have folks joining us here. We'll be answering questions along the way, so thank you, those of you who are here. And thank you for your questions. We are going to start this episode by pulling a card. So we're going to pull a card for the collective. And if you all listen to our Capricorn episode, Mariana shared a bit of a ritual for tuning into the year. And today, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mariana, but the sun is at 7 degrees of Capricorn today?
I think it's like it's 6, yeah.
It's
6 to 7, 6 degrees.
Okay. So we'll be pulling a card for the collective that represents our February of 2023. I'm just shuffling a little here. And this card will give us a sense of what the collective will be moving through in February of 2023. And I encourage all of you who are listening to shuffle your decks and pull a card for yourself and see what your February has in store. Okay. So we have the Goddess of Stones coming through for February. The Goddess of Stones, this is the Wanderer's Tarot deck that I'm pulling from, and the Goddess of Stones is akin to the Queen of Pentacles in traditional tarot. Queen of Pentacles for February, I really love that. With the Queen of Pentacles, there's a sense of this real rootedness in our energetic capacity, and in our work, in the work we've committed to doing this year. So, I'm sorry, my cat is chiming in for the reading. So this can give you a sense of maybe how you can activate your goals in February. I think it will be kind of a fertile year for planting seeds, and actually just for digging I'm seeing this like gardening vision, but for really, digging into the soil, getting dirty and doing the work that you are most passionate and excited about.
It's for those who haven't seen it. Yesterday, Casey pulled 9 of Pentacles for January, and we have a very earthy, very fertile energy in the start of the year. I love this.
I love this too. Yeah. I feel like it's interesting because for me, energetically, it feels like the year is starting off sort of slowly. It's cautioning us to not rush into any actions or, putting all of our eggs in one basket, as they say, but it's really kind of encouraging us to do some foundational work to set ourselves up for success down the line. So if you are someone who sets intentions, as we're doing kind of with this exercise, or resolutions for the new year, be gentle with yourself would be my advice, and take your time to really commit to those intentions, like really, really feel into how those commitments or resolutions are going to sustain you through the year.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And Suzanne also put Pentacles. Oh my God, it's just like, we are building people, the foundation. I love it. Yeah, it also feels, as you were talking, I thought, and because we're going to talk more in depth about Pluto and Aquarius, but Nine of Pentacles, and it was Queen of Pentacles, right, that you pulled just now? Queen of Pentacles, it's very much independence. So much of independence in this card. And it's like, I am full enough so I can take care of the ones that I love. Energy, like very earth. And Pluto in Aquarius is very much, for me also, it's going to be about learning about how our unique individuality can be of service, how it's essential.
I love that. That feels very in alignment with our tarot card for the collective of the year, which is the Chariot. So 2023 is the year of the Chariot. And we calculate that just by adding up all the numbers in the year. 2023, 2 plus 2 plus 3 is 7, which is the Chariot. And the Chariot, I feel like, has this air of striking out on your own, kind of like moving into that independent path, accepting that your path is your own and really taking responsibility for where you're headed, and leaving behind perhaps some of the inherited ideals or expectations from your family of origin, your lineage, society at large, and deciding to do you in a very strong and sensitive way, because the Chariot is ruled by Cancer, the zodiac sign Cancer. And there's a way in which that energy really, that sensitivity of Cancer is so important. You know, I get the image of someone who's like a really good barometer, like they can tell what temperature a room is, and they can take an energetic vibe really well and then make an executed or a intelligent decision based on that vibe that they're reading. So while it is this Chariot, the vehicle, it's moving us down a path in a certain direction, there's a way in which that charioteer is really being super intentional about the choices they're making.
I love everything that you just said, because yeah, it's almost like that separation, you know, like in psychology, they say separation from mother, father, the process of that is in a healthy way, in a respectful way, but charting your own path, balanced with those two pillars of in Rider Waite, like dark and light, and having it all in balance. Yeah, I really like this.
I feel like it's Rachel Pollack who says that the Chariot is about individuation, the process of individuation. So yes, all of that. I do feel like we're, as a collective, you know, we've been in this way sort of really focused on our groups. You know, we've been really like cultivating a strong sense of nationalism in a lot of ways collectively. That's been a big theme. And I think this energy of moving into the the Chariot, more of an individualism, it might be a healthy balance. You know, individualism is not perfect by any means, but there is a way in which I think dropping into our own needs and our own sensitivities in a way, and like being in the nuance of that, is really important. And I think, Mariana, you mentioned this in one of our conversations about this visual, which I've definitely held on to, of the chariot year being like, everyone is in their own lane, but we're on this like massive mega freeway together, and we're having to navigate that space together.
Yeah.
And I really liked that.
Yeah, it does feel like that. And you know what, one other thing the chariot archetype reminds me of is that I'm Circassian, like this small ethnical group in the mountains, so Caucasus. And we have a saying in Circassian that translates roughly as, and that saying was with us for hundreds of years, and we forgot about it. And it says, those who don't go with time and move forward with the change of time, change of tides, they will lose their tradition. So tradition is not holding on like for the life of us to something that has outlived itself, but to move with the time. That is actual preservation, not the other way around. And just kind of feel like a chariot.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I really like that. We're evolving in big ways this year.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What are we starting with?
Should we share just like the major sort of movements of the outer planets, just to give people a little preview before we dive in?
Yeah, let's go. So there are about like 6-7 major celestial shifts that are happening in 2023. We're going to talk about each one of those. Some of them are more frequent and we are more familiar with them, and some of them are absolutely new and something that we'll have to experience firsthand as a collective. So the first one we have is Saturn, the planet of limitation and form and legacy and structure and time, is moving into Pisces on March 7th. That is one thing. Last time Saturn was in Pisces was 1993, 1994 into 1996. So almost 30 years ago, a long time ago. And then, Keisha, do you want to take the second one?
Sure. Yes. And then we have Pluto dipping its toes into Aquarius this year. So Pluto will move into Aquarius for a few months. Let me get my notes here. So Pluto moves into Aquarius on March 23rd. So I feel like March is a big pivot point for us just in this year. I just wanted to say that. Pluto moves into Aquarius on March 23rd. And then it re-enters Capricorn on June 11th. So we're kind of getting like a taste of what this Pluto in Aquarius will feel like this year. And then it will re-enter into Aquarius in 2024 and stay there for a long time. Yeah. So this is a good time to get the flavor of Pluto in Aquarius. It's like a preview, an energetic preview. And, Pluto is this transformative energy that is symbolic of death and rebirth, and that process, that cyclical process. So there's something about Pluto in Aquarius. Aquarius is the humanitarian, the revolutionary, the idealist, the innovator. There's going to be this big cycle, I think, of rebirth in those arenas. So there's a lot of potential with Pluto in Aquarius for big shifts, big changes that really alter the course of humanity, I would say.
It's not over, like, it's not like when you say alter the course of humanity, it's exactly the right words. It's not over the top.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. It's like massive one. We'll talk about the Pluto cycle throughout this talk, because this is a major one, and probably we're going to talk even more about this by 2024, when it's going to spend more time in Aquarius and fully move into that sign until 2044. And then we have Jupiter. Jupiter is in Aries right now, and it's going to be in Aries until May 16th. Moving super fast. It's just like the whole sign. So it ingressed back into Aries, what, December, kind of
20th?
somewhere.
Yeah.
20th, was it?
I think so.
I think so too. Yeah, so December 20th, Jupiter ingressed back into Aries. And generally, with the retrograde and everything, Jupiter stays a year in one sign. But here, it's gonna just like move so quickly through the sign of Aries. So it's like less than 6 months. And it's very, very indicative of the Aries archetype, the fast moving, the very much momentum has to be acknowledged with Jupiter in Aries. It's not a kind of second guessing time. It's time for cardinal fast movement, especially come mid-January when Mars goes direct in Gemini, the ruler of Aries. So second part of January, it's gonna like accelerate to the next level. And then on May 16th, Jupiter is gonna move in Taurus. In Taurus season, Jupiter moves in Taurus, and it's gonna be in Taurus till the end of the year. We're gonna talk more about its retrograde and motions when we're gonna be talking about Jupiter and what it signifies for you. But yeah, it's just all those value system changes that we have been experiencing with Uranus in Taurus. Jupiter is going there and kind of helping us to reap the benefits of all that has been uprooted or misplaced, as it might feel, or shaken in a positive way. Yeah, I like that.
It gives me this kind of fun image too of thinking about Jupiter as sort of a benevolent ruler in a way, and like how we can revision what leadership looks like with this Uranian influence that's been moving through Taurus. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, to think about who we are as leaders, like what our role is, to lead the way into the future in a very different direction towards maybe more collective care, mutual aid, sustainable futures. I feel like there's a lot of potential there. I'm putting that spell out there for that kind of potential.
I love that. Yeah, and especially Jupiter in Aries. So like every cycle is kind of hopefully benefits from the previous cycle, especially the benefic like Jupiter. So finding who we are, the authenticity of Jupiter in Aries, and taking it and applying that in the right places. That's what's important. So, like you said, knowing what kind of leader or what kind of place do you want to occupy in this earthly realm that we're in. What are your teachings that you're bringing with you? Right?
Yeah, this is a good place to note too. Be looking at your chart and noticing, what planets do you have in Aries, where Jupiter is going to be moving through? What planets do you have in Pisces, where Saturn's going to be transiting through? What sign or what planets do you have in Aquarius? And what houses do these signs occupy for you? Because that'll give you a lot of information about how some of this energy might affect you personally as you look to your year ahead.
That is so important. This whole conversation, you have to apply it to your chart. So like Casey, what you just said, find the main signs as players this year are Aquarius, Pisces, in a more where you have to up level kind of energy, where you have to kind of self-correct, reclaim the power energy. It's more of a like nitty-gritty work. And then we have more where you can find resources and help in your chart. It's where Aries and Taurus in your chart. Those are the placement where you can rely upon. Just think about it like that and then apply it back to your chart. And yeah, and then we can move to the Mercury retrogrades, our favorites. Yeah. So it's in the earth element. This year, all Mercury retrogrades, except the last one, but it's going to deep into Sagittarius. So in the very last like weeks of the year, but majority of the Mercury retrogrades this year are going to be in the earth realm. So again, this is where how you create stability for yourself through your communication, through the skills that you have, through the ability to connect to others and create better structures for yourself. This is what's going to be revisioned for everyone. It's where Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are in your charts. Think about that. Stability.
Yeah, it's so interesting that we've been pulling these Pentacle cards too for the beginning of the year. I feel like there's something about Mercury going retrograde in earth elements and this year energetically that feels it feels really like emblematic of this cycle that we're moving through, where it's really about, it's not necessarily about our intentions anymore. Hopefully 2022 was the year when you clarified a lot of what your value system is and got some grounding in that. Come to understand your commitments that you've made to yourself, to other people this year. And in 2023, it's really about showing up and acting in alignment with those values, those commitments. So it's a real opportunity to show who you are versus telling people who you are. It's like you have to kind of really, walk your talk, I would say, this year.
Indeed, like so true, so true. It's this year, and give yourself grace. I want to add to this. This year, 2022, was with, first of all, next year we're not going to have the aspects as heavy as 2022. There will be a different set of challenges, but the square between Saturn and Uranus that has been prevalent and absolutely like holding us in the grip of not being able to move beyond the certain restrictions of the past, of how the systems are built, how we have organized our life. And somewhere like in October, November, we started slowly moving out of that kind of sense of grip on us, that fixed energy grip, and it's became much easier. And by like the first few months of 2023, especially when Saturn completely moves out of Aquarius, that square folds, because there is still whole sign square happening while Saturn is still in Aquarius, though there is not like, it's not close degrees, but I still consider these energies are in conversation with each other until until Saturn moves into Pisces. So we have this, and it's going to get so much easier in that regard. The grip of that fixed square is going to kind of dissolve by March. And because like it almost feels like we couldn't, the old wasn't fully broken down, and the new couldn't be fully put together with that square.
Definitely. A lot of deconstruction work in 2022. Yeah. Lot.
Internal, external. So
yeah, I do think March, I don't know, March feels like such a important month. It feels like, you know, the equinox happens, the spring equinox happens in March. And I believe it's on the 20th this year. Let's see. Yeah, it's on March 20th, 2023 is a spring equinox. And we also have a new moon just the next day, an Aries new moon on March 21st. So it feels like the spring equinox, I don't know, for me energetically, that is always kind of a point where I feel very much starting this new cycle of growth, just in alignment with the Earth's natural cycles, and with these big planetary movements and shifts of Saturn moving into Pisces on March 7th, Pluto moving into Aquarius March 23rd. You know, there's a lot of big movement happening in March. So that's a good time to, I don't know, set your sights on that and really think about what you might be initiating as you kind of move through and into the spring.
yeah, and especially find Pisces and Aquarius in your chart, which
Yes.
house, find and see what plans you have there, and just kind of not to overwhelm yourself, because from personal experience, I know it can, like, when you find something, you can like turn towards some negative assumptions right away. Don't see it as an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity here. That's how we actually should see astrology, as a divine, absolutely marvelous that we even have this guidance, and not as some kind of like punishment and doom and gloom and how we all it's just see like, if you see it like that, kind of shifts the perspective, and the perspective shifts everything else.
So true. Really good advice. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of ways that we can give ourselves anxiety in this world. Don't let astrology be one of them.
It has been not for that.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we dive into a little bit more of the energy of Saturn into Pisces and go
Right.
there?
Yeah, we'll talk about eclipse. We're also going to talk about the eclipses and nodes of the moon changing. But let's start with Saturn Pisces, unpack it a little bit, and then we'll touch upon some other things. Yeah, because there are eclipses, nodes. I'm just going to briefly mention this. Nodes of the moon are moving from Taurus and Scorpio, where we've been dying and being born and dying, being born.
It's been a lot.
Yeah, it's been a lot, into like Aries and Libra, where we learn how to, again, reclaim the individuality itself within all our partnerships. Okay. Saturn and Pisces.
Yeah, so it's always exciting to me when Saturn moves into a new sign, because you have people graduating out of their Saturn returns, and kind of a new group of people moving into their Saturn returns. So Saturn being this planet that matures us, and really evolves our karmic contracts in big ways. It can reveal a lot, not only in our personal lives about who we are and how we structure who we are, but also the collective, and what shape the collective is taking in its quest for maturity.
All right. Do you guys see my screen?
So we've just pulled up the chart of when Saturn is moving. Is this, yes, when Saturn is moving into Pisces.
It's right here. Do you guys see it? Yay. So, so Saturn is not going back or retrograding back into Aquarius. So it's going to go through Pisces for the next 2.5 years, uninterrupted, with the retrogrades all in Pisces. So it's March 7th, might be like a few minutes earlier, but around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on my clock. So the chart of the ingression generally tells us a lot about the themes of the planet spending 2.5 years in that sign. So, and I always look, so Saturn 0 degrees of Pisces, we have Sun and Mercury and Neptune all in Pisces here. So the closest aspect that Saturn does is conjunction to Mercury. It's 8 degrees, but we will take that. So communication about our faith, Saturn in Pisces, about our spiritual beliefs, about a disillusionment in certain systems of faith and structures of, I anticipate some kind of real religious crisis within the institutions, because Saturn does represent institutions, and it doesn't have to be Christianity. I think it's going to touch upon all major religions, and it will guide people towards a greater understanding of their personal relationship with the divine at the end of the cycle. But Saturn is considered to be in its joy placement in Pisces, because Pisces, whenever Saturn, considered malefic, goes into a sign or a house associated with the sign, here's the 12th house, Pisces is associated with the 12th house, more of a house of hidden things, self-undoing, maybe addictions, things like that. It kind of diminishes because Saturn limits things. So when it goes into a more traditionally considered negative house, which is the 12th house, which when unaware can bring a lot of self-sabotaging behavior, it can really suppress that. It's not comfortable though. It can be a little bit like how whatever has been hidden from you, let's look at it like this. Pisces is associated with everything that is hidden from us. It's our subconscious. So whatever has been hidden within your subconscious mind will have to be dealt with. To get better understanding what themes of that could be, find what house Pisces is in for you. It will really give you a greater understanding of what are the themes that are hidden from you that will have to be brought to the light. And because Sun is in Pisces as Saturn, it will have to be brought to the light. And it has to do with information. It has to do with mental landscapes, because Mercury, it has to do with communication in many instances, I would imagine. And then let's look at the ruler of Pisces. Traditional ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. Jupiter is in Aries with Chiron as Saturn enters Pisces. So it's almost like the healing of the self, the healing of the true individuality that has been diluted with the collective pool of not ours, of what's not ours, will have to be dealt with. And Sun being in Pisces, I also kind of think about a lot of like masculine energy that has created a level of projection, because Pisces is also about projection and illusion. It's the world is built, and because like the ruler of Pisces goes into Aries, which is a masculine sign, we have to, well, we often talk about the healing of wounded feminine. We have to heal a wounded masculine, our ego, feminine ego within ourselves. The desire to be seen, how we hide ourselves, how we, through self-sabotaging behaviors, maybe project the power to others, project authority to others, give it back, give it away to, because we don't see it, because it's hidden from us, that Saturn in Pisces is going to reveal a lot of that. There's a lot of symbolism in this ingression.
So much.
So much. And then Moon is in Virgo as opposite. So Saturn ingresses into Pisces on the full moon, on the axis of healing and the axis of service, right? And the axis of the main issue that both Virgo and Pisces struggle through different ways, by different paths, is the issue of boundaries. So we are right away understand here that the boundaries will have to be reinstalled. Psychic boundaries, health boundaries, Virgo, and Moon is people. So our health, our immune system, all that, we have to really start taking care of that. And when Saturn goes into any sign, it kind of brings a limitation, so we get a better understanding of what we need to do. And Pisces is a sign that is associated with the immune system and the liquids in our body. It's lymph system. It's circulation, even some, I would put circulation here because the ruler is in Aries and it's blood, right? So we really need to think about moving fluids through our body. And I'm gonna go real nitty gritty here and be dry brushing. I don't know what people do, drinking liquids and broths and whatever it is, but kind of hyping up your immune system by the time Saturn goes into Pisces is going to be so important, right?
And all the energetic cleansing you can do, taking magical baths, that would be a really, really good practice to kind of get into a routine with. Cleansing your energetic spaces, your energetic fields, and your home too, getting rid of things that are causing you psychic clutter.
Yeah. It's almost like this full moon during the ingression of Saturn into Pisces is telling us that we have to really take care of our body and our psychic, what you said, state, and our relationship to the protection of the physical and of more ethereal realms, if you may. It's going to be a main theme.
Yeah, and that's such as you know, Saturn in Pisces to me is really affirming, that our earthly form is extremely sensitive to the celestial realms, is extremely sensitive to the energetic realms. It's kind of that. And I think people have gotten so much more conscious of this, just even in the last few years with the pandemic, is just how sensitive really we are, and how our sensitivity can really impact how our bodies function, how healthy we feel. And I think this is going to get even more heightened with this transit, is just really being cautious and aware of how you can impact your well-being through, spiritual, energetic, intentional medicines, and vice versa, not ignoring your physical body for the sake of an energetic medicine. So be careful about that Piscean tendency to kind of just like dissolve too much into the etheric realm. You know, Saturn is here to teach us how to find balance with that. It's to like be in our bodies consciously and feel all the feelings, feel the spiritual impulses, not lose sight of either forms of intelligence, I guess.
Yeah, it's the balance. The full moon highlights that it's going to be about the balance. And the balance is going to be asserted by the spiritual discipline that you apply. And the spiritual discipline that you apply to your life, to your routine daily, are going to affect your physical health. So all of that, we have to like, because Pisces is a very kind of like flowy energy. Saturn there is like, this work is a discipline work. This is a work. Your health depends on your spiritual discipline in many ways. An ability to show up through, and the ruler of Virgo here is in Pisces. Show up through a correct routine, taking care of yourself spiritually, but it often happens. For many people, I anticipate that it will happen through some crisis of faith. And finding that faith, like I'm just going to reiterate this, faith is an art of discipline. And unfortunately, I feel we have kind of wandered off from that notion. And faith even in oneself, in one's personal capacity. The sun is in Pisces, personal relationship with the divine. It has to be a part of your daily life for it to support you.
And I think it's worth mentioning too that, you know, your faith is an evolving project, just like you. So crisis of faith doesn't mean that something is wrong. Yes, it can feel like a crisis because you can feel kind of lost and you have to find new systems. And I tell this to my clients all the time, you can have a really great cleansing routine for years and all of a sudden it will stop working as well, you know, because for whatever reason, you're in contact with new energies, there are new challenges, you're in a new environment. So it's really important to keep evolving your spiritual practices with the needs of the collective, with your own needs. So it's going to be a really good moment to remind yourself of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just one last thing that I want to mention here. Saturn has been transiting Saturn ruled signs since the end of 2017. So it's like almost 5 years, right? Saturn has been in Saturn ruled signs, really like holding us in the grip of dealing with collective concerns of the day-to-day life. Because Pisces is the only sign that doesn't deal with necessarily people. It deals with the spiritual realm, right? It deals with our inner God or goddess. It deals with all that. So building better structured relationship with them, with that, whatever it is for you, that inner divine presence is going to be tremendously important. Building that relationship with that inner deity. Structured, respectful, considering the time, considering the responsibility, and being very respectful for that inner presence. And actually I forgot to mention one more thing. Pisces, Saturn is gonna start approaching Neptune in Pisces. It's gonna get there by 2025. It's not next year, but start now. Work on your both energetic and physical boundaries, your immune system. What I've mentioned, I just want to like that really sink in. that making sure that you maybe make a point of drinking warm liquids. And I feel like I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's gonna really help. It's a minor thing, but with Moon and Virgo, I can totally see how it's gonna be like essential of tending to your physical.
Solid advice. Drink your tea.
Drink your tea, drink your broth, do your and because Saturn, like Pisces in water, or Saturn is solidifier, it's gonna make us feel cold. Maybe circulation, maybe you will like working on your circulation is gonna be very, very important. Like that's why I'm like moving, like doing all that stuff. So everything that liquid and moving through your body is not getting solidified and stuck in places. That's going to be very important. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions? I feel like I'm not looking at the.
Should we move on to Pluto? My favorite.
Your favorite. So this is the chart of Pluto. This is Pluto here. Our little monster.
Beautiful monster.
Aquarius. Actually, I have a whole bunch of notes on that in a separate doc. I might be opening it as because when I talk about it, I need to look at the notes. Right. But yeah, so Pluto, I don't know, Casey, do you have any like kind of key things that you feel intuitively about Pluto in Aquarius?
Well, I mean, Pluto has this really potent ability to bring things to the surface. Mm-hmm. It is, you know, Pluto is in mythology, it's named after the underworld god from Greek mythology. And so there's this way that Pluto brings things up to the surface, as well as it can have this kind of ability to repress, to oppress, to push things down into our unconscious. So it has this dual function. I think my hopeful or optimistic read of Pluto and Aquarius would be that this really helps us get to the roots of some of the much needed transformations we need to make as a society, as a collective. But in doing so, you know, Pluto's going to take us to the underworld in order to really examine the things that need to be rooted differently. I think there's a way in which there's going to be like a lot of deeper systemic understanding of I don't love to use this word, but I will just in terms of this context, but a deeper systemic understanding of like evils that we coexist with in the world. You know, the realities of systemic racism, systemic inequality, poverty, and how these things have been manufactured throughout time. I think like we've already had so much more clarity about this in recent years, but I think we're going to get even more clear about it. I don't think it's going to be a debate any longer. I think it's going to be more of an understood reality that the systems that we exist within have been manufactured to oppress other people, to oppress certain types of people. And I think from that radical clarity and understanding that Pluto in Aquarius can bring us, there's a lot of space for revolution and change. So that's my hope, I guess. But I was saying this to Mariana before we went live, but you know, Pluto's kind of like this poisonous substance. Mm-hmm. And poison in a correct dosage can be extremely potent and healing, curing. But you have to get that dosage right. And yeah, poison is not something to be trifled with. So it's gonna be an intense 20 years. I mean, we're just experiencing this transit for we're getting the preview this year in 2023. And then Pluto will be moving through Aquarius from 2024 until 2043 or something like that. So yeah, it's kind of like, let's buckle up and get clear about what this is about.
It's like, it's very much on point what you're saying. This is Pluto, and I like to say this, Pluto is about liberation. For me, Pluto and Uranus are both planets of liberation. But Uranus takes you up, and Pluto takes you down.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like both are wired to make things better and cleaner and more, especially Pluto. It's a great purifier. It's a very purifying energy. And I always like to say that it's a planet of evolution, and evolution does not have to be kind. The level of kindness we experience from Pluto is directly tied of our understanding of the responsibility and power we hold within individually, in Aquarius especially. Without understanding that poison that you've beautifully spoken about is dispersed not by us. Right? So, and it's going to be experienced. It's almost like if we already have too much of that poison in our body, it can kill us. I just get this. If we have less of that poison like if we're already polluted with whatever Pluto brings in as a healing, it's gonna kill, and I'm sorry to get dark, but kill symbolically, hopefully. We carry all these energies within, too much of Pluto within, in terms of too much of that venom within. And if it's added to us, actually the perfect amount of it's going to be added. How we internally conduct ourselves and what's happening with that venom within us will determine whether it's healing or something else.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Right? It just feels like it. It's just, when you were spoken about venom, I'm like, yeah, that's the main thing with Pluto.
Because Pluto is also power. Very much represents power. So as Mariana was saying, it really is this question of like, how is power distributed? Who has power? How do we access power? And I think Pluto, planet of power, being into Aquarius, which is kind of this the sign of humanity, humanitarian understanding of the world. Like, I think there's this way that we can really radicalize the way we think about distributing the poison, you know? Because right now, the way that power has set itself up, it's poisoning a select group of people, right? And it's protecting itself from a lot of the poisons. So if we can figure out how to share and redistribute the poison so that it's actually tolerable for people.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about it like that. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's almost, yeah, it's the Pluto transits are very much, it's going to hold a mirror. In Aquarius, it's going to hold a mirror to our collective state, more than it was in Capricorn, because in Capricorn, it held a mirror more so to those in power. So the authority, the government, the structures in power, Capricornian presence, Saturn, right? And Pluto in Aquarius is us, it's people, and it's going to hold a mirror to us, to how we respond or how we handle this energy. Let's look at the chart briefly
Yes.
of this transit. I don't know how to move this. Do you see this like mute stop video buttons? It's just like in the bottom of the chart. Move.
We can see.
Like, how do I move this thing? Here we go.
We can see the chart.
Yeah, good. So as we see Pluto 0 degrees of Aquarius, first time in 240 years, we'll talk a little bit about what happened when Pluto was in Aquarius. Last time this country was getting its first beginnings as an independent country. So after the Civil War, the first whatever amount of years that was, like almost 22 years was happening. The foundational blocks of the so-called freedom of United States was laid with Pluto in Aquarius. Like not, so the country was formed with Pluto in Capricorn, but the work of building most of it, the first 20 years after the Civil War, was mostly with Pluto in Aquarius, because the chart of United States has Pluto in 28 degrees of Capricorn. So like, right, it was like, as soon as the Civil War was over, just a couple of years, and Pluto moved into Aquarius, so the country was getting its like first steps with Pluto in Aquarius. So Pluto in Aquarius, what aspects does Pluto make in this chart? Let's look at this. First, we're going to look at the conjunctions. I'm not going to look at the asteroid conjunctions, but Pluto is squaring nodes of the moon. So equal distribution of value will have to take place. North Node in Taurus. How the power and the resources are communicating with each other, and how they are at odds with each other. This is the first ingression. It's very important. And because the South Node is in Scorpio, the hidden agenda about the distribution of power will have to be shaken up. Pluto is also squaring South Node in Scorpio. The hidden agenda about the resources and the hidden resources, because Pluto, North Node in Taurus is like visible resources, like grains and beautiful trees and nature and whatever food and things that we can see. South Node is what we don't see. And how is that gonna be, like you said, Casey, come to the surface? It's gonna be revealed. Not maybe right away, but within the course of the next 20 years, because we have this square at the inception, it's going to be revealed. Then we have Mars that has been in Gemini since August of 2022, and serving us with major lessons about how we use our agency to communicate. How do we use our words? How do we assert our will and courage within our immediate environments, within our networks, within our communities? A lot of that, Mars is a critical degree of Gemini, and also kind of highlighting that there is a sense of, I don't know, like something coming to like a major realization point for many of us whenever Gemini is in your chart. What else? The ruler of the Pluto in Aquarius is Saturn in Pisces, because the ruler of Saturn, the ruler of Aquarius is Saturn, is in Pisces. So what does this tell us? Again, we are coming back to our relationship with the divine, our relationship with boundaries, our relationship with the higher selves. That is, so our communities depend on how well our spiritual systems are established for each of us separately. What is the form that, because spirituality comes first. I don't care how how people look at their reality. For me, nothing can be done until we have that inner relationship with whatever it is. It's very hard to create fair, just structures when you don't have that spiritual vertical. You know, find Aquarius in your chart. What house Aquarius sits in your chart. This is the place that ultimately will become a point of the great empowerment for you, through maybe a crisis, through some sort of things that will have to be let go. But the goal is for you to be liberated in that specific area in your chart. The liberation is the goal. Right? I really like this. I was telling Casey earlier, I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. It's just such a major changes, but I cannot get enough of what it can possibly bring to us if we just conscious enough.
Right.
If we're aware enough of what's happening and we're aligned with what's happening.
Well, it's also beautiful because this chart has this amazing stellium in Aries. We have the Sun, Mercury, Chiron, Jupiter, and the Moon all in Aries at this moment when Pluto is ingressing. And, you know, I just see that, and energetically, I read that as like kind of like flipping a switch or like striking a match. And I do think so many of us have been really plodding along through this Pluto and Capricorn energy, doing a lot of really heavy lifting. And it feels like even this change of sign from Pluto in an earth sign, where, you know, we are very much deeply in that earthy, heavy underworld realm, to Aquarius, which is an air sign, it brings things into a different realm of consciousness that I think is going to be really helpful for us in terms of decision making and sort of understanding our role in this liberation work.
Yeah.
At least I hope so.
Yeah, it's so interesting because that like this science and conversation with each other, and like the rule, and you so brilliantly brought it to Aries, because truly we look at the ruler of Aquarius, that is Saturn in Pisces. The ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. Jupiter is in Aries. Then we have to look at the ruler of Aries. The ruler of Aries is in Mars, at critical degree of Gemini, and the ruler of Gemini is in Aries, Mercury. So it comes back to Aries. The full circle of rulership comes back into Aries. So that striking a match, I'm like a little bit terrified because it's on my birthday, all this happening. I'm like, this is gonna be just like something so intense. Crazy. So
I love that for you.
me too. Yeah, so it's a very like about individual ability to lead, whichever capacity. It's a leadership energy of each and every one that you have to tap into. You have to. It's almost like the transformation is about taking responsibility for your relationship with the divine, then maybe finding that, what's that word I like, phrase, divine rage or sacred rage. There's finding that, communicating that, Mercury in Aries, speaking the truth about oneself, speaking about the truth about what you see around yourself with greater clarity. Mars is at the last degree of Gemini. There is almost like so much light being shined upon certain things that you can't look away. You know, it's very, very powerful. I'm gonna like quickly stop sharing and just look at, do you guys have, I see some messages. I don't know.
Any questions about any of this? So the Pluto and Saturn are these like longer transiting planets. So we'll be experiencing their energy for longer, and we'll definitely be talking about them throughout the year and next year. So
Yeah,
let things ruminate. I'm excited to see how things end up manifesting for folks in the community.
yeah, it's very interesting, especially we've spoken, these two planets are playing such a huge role in 2023, and they were the planets that came together in 2020 in January. That was a kind of precursor to the major changes in all over the world and here in the United States, and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that happened in January of 2020. That's kind of like kicked off all of this. And now, and both Saturn and Pluto since then were in Saturn ruled signs, and now they're both changing signs, right? Especially Saturn is leaving Saturn ruled signs. So it's like a sense of like, you know, like we've been like held in this energy without a way to escape. And now with this Saturn in Pisces, there is a way to like almost float out of it. It feels like it's breaking down in a good way. We can like float over the existing boundaries of the reality we have been in for so long. And with Pluto in Aquarius, I often think about Prometheus for some reason. And because the ingression, and it comes back into Aries too, it's about this fire, it's about this sacred fire that has to be distributed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uniquely for the gods, so-called gods.
Right.
You know, and that Aquarian archetype for me is very much, and Mercury is exalted in Aquarius, so it's like knowledge. You have to pass this knowledge, this information, this fire.
I'm thinking about Robin Hood too.
Yeah, I like that.
Like, you know, stealing from the rich and redistributing.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a way in which, you know, Robin Hood is seen as a thief, which is like kind of like a Plutonian, you know, he's like an evil bad guy. And there is ways that Pluto also is associated with kind of like taking things, Persephone being one of them, depending on how you read the myth. But, you know, Pluto in Aquarius is like taking maybe what's been wrongfully hoarded, or repressed or oppressed. So
yeah, there is so much here, honestly, with Pluto and Aquarius. And I still want to emphasize the individual nature of Aquarius. It's because Aquarius is collective energy, very much so, but it's also very individual energy. That's the greatest paradox of Aquarius. So here we can fall into two edges, or two like separate things that are both extreme. And we have to be mindful of this, because Aquarius, on the one hand, Aquarian energy can, out of the lack of understanding, can separation, almost like It can be a toxic trait of Aquarius, separating from the collective processes because there is a lack of understanding from that said collective. That is one thing. It's like a denial. Separation is a denial that a lot of people, I expect, not wanting to face their power, Pluto and Aquarius, will go into denial. That is something to be really mindful about. Another thing is thinking that figures or characters will come into the collective arena that think that they know what everyone needs. That is another extreme of Pluto in Aquarius. Very charismatic energy that comes in and dictates out of the good intention. That's why individual authority is going to be of paramount all the way through this transit. There is nothing more important than this, and not falling into the extremes. And another thing is like that I think about, that freedom is an internal process, and it takes power to handle true freedom. And when we think about this, it's like, can we handle freedom when it's presented to us, and how we're going to handle it? It's all tests. I like, actually not me, but my teacher likes to present everything as a test. She's like, are you going to pass the test? Are we not going to pass the test? And I'm like, okay. And then it's like, we have to see through the test. We have to understand the purpose of this. So understanding the Pluto archetype in Aquarius, understanding Aquarius energy, and being very mindful of all of this.
Extremely. Yeah, it's interesting. I do believe we're going to be supported by this Chariot energy if we can tune into it, because it's really about reconnecting with that individual sovereignty that you're talking about. And I believe that if you frame it in a way in which you're able to think about your own individuality as an interconnected being, like if we're really able to drop into an embodied understanding of you as an individual are not shaped in a vacuum, you're actually shaped by all the interactions that you have with the spirits, the land, your community, your lineage. I think that we can maintain some kind of grounding that's actually supportive as we forge our own paths and work on our own individual, I don't know, drives, be in our own little chariots.
Yeah, it's so true. We have to, and it's a lot of inner work to truly understand what individuality means. And I think a lot of people misinterpret that concept. Because,
yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, Pluto and Aquarius is when really a really formative time for the United States, because it was predicated on this kind of myth of individualism, and an individualism that was really for white cis men.
Yep.
It was very specifically built for a group of people. And at this point, we have the ability to redefine what individuality actually is, that is maybe more rooted in the reality of the world is which we live in, that we're all understanding, is that everything is so connected and dependent on one another for survival. And so that's my hope.
I made a note here. I'm looking at notes and I made a note and I wrote it, and I never say this, but I'm going to say it now because of what you just said. Aquarian energy can be very elitist. I don't know if I pronounce it correct. Elitist. elite.
Elitist. Mhm.
Because there is a sense of knowing better. Those people, what I'm saying about charismatic person coming in, it's what happened when this country was founded. There was like a number of them. And I won't be surprised if some of them are Aquarius people. I don't know, because two of the most prominent signs of the presidents are first Aquarius and second is Scorpio in the history of the United States. The most presidents of the United States were Aquarians. So I wholeheartedly believe that they had an idea of that they're doing a good thing. The thing is that the idea that they had was not, like you said, reflecting the reality, because they're separated. Separation is a denial, it's another extreme of an Aquarius. So it's one of the most complex archetypes to deal with, because it's in modern astrology, it's ruled by Uranus. The extremes, the fluctuation is sometimes beyond our capacity to understand. Goodness, and it's not even about goodness or evil, it's just some kind of perception, the perception of reality, right? And that's why I always make this emphasis, is that if you're not choosing that individualism is not to be separate or to tell others what to do, it is not to be swayed from who you are. Because that is the main thing for Pluto in Aquarius, in my opinion here, not being swayed from being who you are on every individual case by case, because Aquarius energy sees large things. And we have to on one hand, and then sees a very separate lonely entity on the other hand. So here it's very, I don't know if making sense for those who are listening or will be listening. And I hope you can I feel like people who have Aquarius in their chart can really grasp that concept, that pendulum of existence.
Yeah, and noticing where, everyone take note of where, we've mentioned this before, but where Aquarius lands in your chart, and think about how that manifests for you and how this planet being there might help you.
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting that this country was built on the premises of freedom. Freedom was everything, but it was so selective. It was so conditioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was not a freedom that, it was not inclusive by any means.
Yeah.
It was not inclusive by any means whatsoever. And I just think we need to really consider these things, and whoever comes into the arena for the next 20 years as a powerful, liberating force, it's a good idea to question and give time for them to unfold and unravel.
Mm-hmm.
Because this can be a very extremist energy, and it is. The thing is, the French Revolution happened on Pluto and Aquarius. The heads were rolling, literally, guillotine, French. All right. So let's see how it's gonna play out. It's very interesting.
We do have a question in the chat from Zevi wanting to know more about the idea of separation as denial. And they also mention it's that Aquarius is their 12th house. So
Pisces rising.
Yeah.
Separation as denial. It's what you said. I think it towards what you said, Casey, earlier, that seeing yourself as separate from the influence, because there's such a deep individuality, and the extreme of an Aquarius archetype can be in that particular part of your chart is that I'm alone, and that is a denial of the potential, because Aquarius thrives on the potential. It sees where nothing is yet. But it's a very tough path to walk, to go somewhere where there's nothing yet. And in 12th house, it's spirituality, it's connection to the spirit, and walking somewhere where you have to carve your own path and to be individual about it is not an easy thing. And it can create that sense of separation, and as a result of that, a denial of other reality. So I feel like the key to Aquarius archetype in many ways is respect for others' reality.
I like that.
It has to somehow play a part, because the true individual will never tell someone that you're not individual, or you're not individual enough, or you should be a different kind of individual. There is,
yeah, maybe this is a spiral, but I do think it's important to remember that we've all been sold on this idea of separation, that we are separate entities, even that our body, our mind, and our spirit don't work in concert together, and that we're separate from the environment, like as if the environment is something other than our bodies. And so I do think that's something to hopefully heal within our psyches and within the way that we navigate being on this planet together. And hopefully Pluto and Aquarius will help with that rather than aggravate it, but we shall see.
It's and it's going to go through the Christ. The goal is for us to understand the things of the true Pluto and Aquarius mystery. And before we go, because I feel like we've been talking, it is a major transit though. It's good that we stopped here for a while, but the last thing, or like for me, the last thing I want to say is that we're looking into Pisces. And I heard a lot that people say that Aquarius has a God complex, which can be true. But the thing is, yes, because you are, but you are part of, you look into Pisces. There is an interconnectedness, there is an infinite interconnectedness to all. And you have to like kind of always think about that.
Yeah, it's not God in like the hierarchical, patriarchal, Abrahamic notion. It's God as in everything is divine and we're all part of that.
Yeah, it's so important. Yeah, it's like you have to understand that you look into Pisces and you are God, but you don't stop there. Others are also God. You like, that kind of respect for the God within the other, or goddess. It's just going to be so important. Yeah.
Definitely. Yes.
Yes. I want to look at that.
So the next, I guess, major planetary movement that we mentioned and we want to maybe tap into a little bit more is Jupiter and Aries.
And Taurus.
And Taurus, yes. And as Mariana mentioned, Jupiter is going to be zipping through Aries this year. And it moved into Aries on December 20th, I believe. Then it'll move into Taurus on the 16th of May.
Yeah.
So really these first 6 months.
Yeah. If not less. Feels like less than 6 months. Yeah.
5 months. It's again that like striking the match, like, okay, what are you initiating? Because Aries is the initiator of the zodiac signs. And there's a lot of energy that comes with Aries alone, and then Jupiter, which expands what it touches. It's really expanding the capacity for Aries to do a lot of work. So there could be a lot of excitement too, that you experience about like possibility and hope and what you can kind of start this year, which I would say I would encourage you to kind of actualize on and feel into. I think we've been through so much in a short amount of time, and taking those moments of excitement or optimism, expansion, and really running with them, I think can't hurt. Obviously, there's a lot of ways it could go wrong, but I think it's almost like a good testing ground for maybe making some mistakes, trying things, like throwing things at the wall,
Yeah,
seeing what sticks. Yeah.
I like that, because like Aries energy is like just do it, and without, and Jupiter is here supporting you. Even you just, like you said, throw it to the wall. It's such a supportive energy that maybe something that you would have thrown a year ago wouldn't stick like that in a very impulsive way. But this time it just might. It just might work out, just like going into things in the relation of where Aries is in your chart. And also when Jupiter is going to come together with Chiron in Aries, it's around the same time that Pluto goes into Aquarius. So it's like second part of March. That initiating capacity is being healed. It's sort of like something is supporting and kind of validating that you can try. There is no punishment on the other side. There's like a wound of like that initiator is being healed. Feels like
Yeah. A beautiful time for Aries rising, Aries sun folks.
yeah. And yeah, another thing that's happening, I really do want to mention that because it's the beginning of this cycle, Jupiter will come together with Sun in Aries on April 11th at 21 degrees. It's just, and Jupiter meets the Sun every year. But last time Jupiter, it was, can't remember exactly, but maybe March, somewhere in March 4th, I think, of 2022, Jupiter and Sun came together in Pisces. Yeah, it was March 4th. And this time, but it was the ending of the cycle. So we think about it in terms of like, there is a 1 year cycle, but then there is like Aries to Pisces cycle. So there were like 12 conjunctions from Aries into Pisces. There were like, and the last conjunction of Jupiter and Sun that happened in March of 2022 was culminating a 12-year cycle of the conjunctions. It has that finality. It wasn't about initiation. It's about like tying loose ends and realizing things and finishing projects and things like that. And this one on April 11th at 21 degrees of Aries, it's just like the beginning of a year-long cycle, but also a 12-year cycle of the conjunction. So it's a big one. Like it's almost that like the firework that let's go, let's do that. And right after the Jupiter conjunct Chiron, so the healing of that, you can start again.
Yeah, so much potential here, especially for folks who are maybe experiencing their Chiron returns around this time too. Like I feel, notice if you can where Chiron is in your chart, and Chiron returns happen around 40 years old, 40?
50.
50.
Yeah.
So around 50 years old. And it's like a whole new cycle of your healing being initiated. And then with the Sun and Jupiter, I don't know, I just feel like initiating like really big waves of healing in your life in all areas of your life, right? It doesn't have to be something that's more internal, because it's Aries. It feels like it's really like something that is going to be felt through your personhood. Other people are going to acknowledge like your own healing and be able to participate in that with you. So it just feels like a special time for you folks who are going through that transit.
I'm so supportive, like really like the selfhood kind of thing. Just see where it is. It falls in your chart. That's where you can start again. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm talking about, but my ascendant is 21 degrees of Aries. this March and April for me is gonna be like, I don't know, like I just hope my nervous system is not gonna go on the overdrive. Like, what's gonna happen? It's gonna be very interesting. So yeah, I'll share, I'm sure, when the time comes.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear. Can't
Yeah,
wait. We'd love to
yeah,
hear from all of you how all of this is affecting you too,
it's gonna be so interesting because honestly, and I keep saying this, and I'm just gonna say it again, but we have been forming this new visions of the new 2023, and when we start actually the groundwork. What have broken down as much as it had broken down, now we kind of like asked to become more active participants of this process with the beginning of the cycle and Jupiter Sun and Pluto in Aquarius and whatnot. And yeah, a lot of that stuff. Hey, what do we look at? And then Jupiter, we have to talk that Jupiter on May 16th moves into Taurus. And anyone who has any Taurus placements, rejoice. This is the time has arrived for you to finally, especially being for anyone with a fixed cross for that matter, the support is on the way. It's the May 16th, mark on your calendars.
Yeah, it's nice that I feel like there's so much of this that's happening in the springtime, and I just have to say energetically how nice that feels to me. Really this time of rebirth in so many symbolic ways, and this ability to kind of come out of the cocoon, this new magical creature. So I'm hoping that these kinds of stages of transformation, especially with Jupiter, it's like, okay, you're stepping into this new sense of inner authority, that hopefully can really sustain you, and your growth pattern, especially in Taurus. I feel like there's a way in which it's like, okay, more confidence in how you're approaching the world and how you're embodying your actions. And
absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like Uranus has wreaked quite a havoc in Taurus in a good way. And it's like now with a greater awareness of ourselves and what we need after Jupiter was in Aries. And because last year also Jupiter had a conjunction with Neptune about our spiritual beliefs, that initiation happening. Now we can bring all that, the spiritual realm, the actualized selves, and start building from a more aware and more grounded place, and creating more. Uranus is still in Taurus, more just and fair and aligned sense of stability for ourselves and for those around us. Yeah, it feels really good. I like Jupiter in Taurus. Yay, it's just, and it's in Venus ruled sign, so kind of the support it's like a hope coming back to affirm our newly found value systems.
yes,
we can build upon this. This is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then I didn't know if I should talk about this, but I'm gonna share the chart real quick. The screen of a specific day here. It's the next day, as right after Jupiter ingress into Taurus, May 17th. We see Jupiter here, Moon is in Taurus, North Node is in Taurus, Mercury is in Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus, Sun is in Taurus. So we have like quite a lot of Taurian present here in mid-April. Do you see the Jupiter-Pluto square opposite Mars? here?
Yeah, so for those of you listening, we have Jupiter at 0 degrees Taurus, Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius, Pluto's opposite Mars at 20.
It's actually, we can, you know what, we can, because this is not exact, we can move it like a day even. And Jupiter Pluto is still square. And I think, yeah, Mars goes into Leo and we have a full fixed square, and it's more like May 20. So May 17th, it's actually activated. You feel it weeks before May 21st, I think. But we have a very powerful T-square between Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars. And Mars 0 degrees of Leo, Pluto 0 degrees of Aquarius, Jupiter at 1 degrees of Taurus, with the North Node in Taurus. So this is history defining, actually, moment, because this is such a rare occurrence with the nodes of the moons with Jupiter showing us the direction we need to go. And then there is Mars in Leo, which is authority and power of the king, whoever that, in different country, in different social paradigm, it's going to be a different entity, imposing some Martian energy on power expressed by people for the values that are promised inherent Jupiter with the North Node at Taurus.
This is also the first day of Gemini season.
Yeah.
So the sun's just moving into Gemini on the 21st.
I looked at this transit. I started more than a year ago. I kind of found this wonderful concoction of planets. And this is a very important time. Mark your calendars for the end of May. This is when we will need to show up in our power with our values. And Pluto here is retrograde, about to go back into into Capricorn. So something happened maybe in the beginning of the Pluto in Aquarius, end of March. Now we're revisiting that by end of May and reacting to that, because there is some Mars in Leo energy being thrown at the collective, at people. Right.
And it's important to me to think about the 0 degree again, and just thinking about all the potential that exists in that placement. I think there's something so radical about this T-square, and then to have it at that 0 degree feels so important, because it really is shedding light on how we could do something, or how this could manifest in a way that is really novel or surprising, or has the potential to set off a really big cycle of growth, development into the future.
This is so powerful. I don't know, like I'm like sitting right now and I'm like, should I share when this happened before? Should I share this, Casey?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So this configuration took place with the difference was that Pluto was in Leo and Mars was in Aquarius. Nodes of the moon were in Taurus. Jupiter was not there, but it was nodes of the moon, Taurus and Scorpio, North Node in Taurus, South Node in Scorpio. Mars was in Aquarius and Pluto was in Leo. Was the beginning of the Second World War, 39. That was exactly that moment. So here, don't get alarmed, because the shifting, the flip thing with Pluto and Mars So back then, Pluto was in Leo. So there was a person, and we know who was that person was. I don't want to name his name, who started the war 39. I'm sure all of us know.
Mhm.
Pluto in Leo, a leader that wanted to assert a global power. And then Aquarius is Mars. And there was a resistance from a lot of communities to that. So there was alliances, Mars in Aquarius, kind of going against that.
Mhm.
And it was for land, northern Taurus, right?
Mhm.
And here we have other way around. Power is with people. So people will demand something that is of value, and the resistance will be coming from another side.
So that's that revolutionary potential to utilize this energy differently. I feel like this is a really good time. I mean, the beginning of the year, Jupiter and Aries, think about organizing strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter moving into Taurus, it's like, okay, how do we actualize and protect what is most valuable to us?
Yep.
Through collective action against egotistical rulers who don't think about anyone but themselves.
Mars in Leo, it's that like the sense of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll see. And then again, find where Aquarius, Leo, Taurus is in your chart. See how you fit into this whole picture. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was thinking, I'm like, should I share this? Should I not? It's just kind of like intense, not to lie. Quite intense.
It is intense. We're in intense times, y'all. I'm sure you've noticed.
All right. Suzanne, I just opened the screen and I saw your face. You're like, oh. You're like, no.
It is so intense.
So intense. Yeah, but honestly, like you see, I'm a very optimistic person. I don't think I know it's for the better. So we have to all align to for the better kind of mentality.
Well, it's interesting too, when you think about astrology and cycles, we're constantly iterating on these cycles. It's never going to play out exactly the way it did when that cycle happened, however many years ago. It's going to be an iteration on that theme.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to take like, okay, back then the solution or the impulse and the reaction to that impulse was to go to war. What does it look like to go to war in 2023? You know, and what does it look like to be collectively working towards something in 2023? What do we want? Like, where are our values at this point collectively? And how are we going to actualize them? So I think these are all things to be thinking about and talking about in your communities. This is really important work to be doing. Push come to shove, who are we protecting? What are we valuing most as a society, and how can we demonstrate that we value those things collectively?
Oh, that's such a wonderful point you're making there. How does the world look like in 2023? The sun and moon are both going to be in Gemini during that configuration.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? It's not like, it's information.
Right.
It's knowledge and information. What we choose to share, what we choose not to share. And just one thing I want to say about the date, like I have written here about Pluto and Aquarius, which relates to this because Pluto is actively in this configuration. The collective power is found through understanding how to work with data, not let the data work you.
Right.
That's how the war looks like.
It's a big edge for us. And we've been dealing with that this whole time with Elon Musk, who's such a, I don't know his chart well, but Mars and Leo describes him to me. He, has taken over this media company and is destroying the way that we can share information freely. So we're already experiencing this on some level, and it's only going to get more challenged and complex. So be strengthening your community networks now, is what I would say.
Yeah. And choose what information you consume. And I am honestly sure that all this Aquarius is all these social networks like Twitter, Facebook, and all of them. They are either going to be completely reinvented or they're going to be destroyed and new ones will come into place in the next 20 years. It's
100%.
absolutely impossible for that not to happen. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. Right. So Jupiter, we talked about Jupiter.
Should we talk about the eclipses? I feel like eclipses, nodes of the moon is where I feel like
major changes happen.
Yeah.
Let's do that. We're not going to focus too much on Mercury retrogrades. I think we mentioned that it's in the Earth signs, and we're going to be talking about them as they go. It's something that we all know the most about, I feel like, right? It's kind of, we'll maybe stop there. The eclipses of 2023. So we are finishing up the eclipses on the nodes, on the axis of Scorpio and Taurus. And on April 20th, we're gonna have the first eclipse, the new moon solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries. It's like, if you're not familiar, nodes of the moon, they create eclipses. They have to be less than 18 or less degrees away from the lunations for them to take place. So the nodes are still going to be in Taurus and Scorpio, but they're going to be in the proximity to the new moon in Aries. So this is going to be an eclipse, new moon eclipse in Aries. So, but then we're going to have, actually, I want to mention the dates on last two eclipses of on the axis of Taurus and Scorpio are going to be the lunar eclipse full moon on May 5th in Scorpio. And then opposite of that is on October 28th during the Scorpio season, we're going to have the full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus. And we kind of finishing up the Taurus Scorpio eclipse cycle for the next 19 years. So we kind of, this is our opportunity to relinquish the values that are toxic, to stop relying on certain things that South Node and Scorpio that are not helpful or healthy for us, maybe. Acknowledge what have been gained there. Take responsibility as much as we can. Reevaluate what kind of values have we built for ourselves or understood to be true with North Node and Taurus. I think value of the earth and nature and the distribution of resources is a big one.
So it's interesting, we have this kind of like starting of a new cycle and the closing out of an old cycle sort of overlapping each other, like they're being woven together in a way, which I think is really interesting. Like I think that's a beautiful opportunity, especially with the moon, moves in tidal ways. It's kind of encouraging us to look into the future and then also resolve and find conclusion in our past. So it's a good kind of energetic note, I guess, to say, like, you can't just say, oh, thank God we got through those eclipses. Now let's move on to this area of our life. It's an ongoing process, as you were saying. And these cycles are building on off of each other. So maintaining your centering with your value systems and
Yeah. It's a lot about knowing oneself and knowing what you value here this whole year. It's about knowing yourself when especially so we have the first eclipse on April 20th at 29 degrees of Aries, but the node's actually gonna move signs. So North Node moves into Aries on July 17th, officially. So we have the first eclipse in April, but the nodes of the moon. You will feel the ramblings of that shift in April, but you will feel the actual movement of the plates, the tectonic plates in July, mid-July. And the nodes of the moon are going to be on the axis of Aries and Libra all the way until January 11th of 2025. And that's going to be about being true to ourselves and maintaining peace. It's not losing oneself in the other. Questions of selfishness versus self-abandonment, and the balance of those two will come into play in many ways. But because North Node is in Aries, we are guided to rely upon our truth of who we are here. Now, hopefully, as Casey noted, that kind of the intertwined energies of Taurus and Aries and Libra and Scorpio, hopefully that we know our values better. We understand what is of value of us, and it supports choosing ourselves, choosing our unique truth in this process. Find where these energies are going to be like both. Find where Aries and Taurus is in your chart. This is a placement where you have to kind of embrace the lessons that it's going to present you, and also find placement of Libra and Scorpio. These are the things that are, I don't like saying that they're of the past necessarily, but they're the energies that we need to put on the back burner for now. They're not something that is essential for us to understand at this moment in time.
yeah, I think I like to think of the South Node sort of as like the compost pile.
Mm-hmm.
Like you put the compost on the things that you want to cultivate and grow and nourish. Like they've already been decomposing and processing and fermenting. And so they've kind of alchemized into something that can be supportive for you. They're not something necessarily that you want to like eat in its pure form, but you want to like supplement that new growth and create something new with that South Node compost.
I really like that metaphor.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard. I mean, I feel like I'm someone who really misread and misdiagnosed my South Node for a long time and ignored it. Because it was in the past or like something you're leaving behind, you're moving towards the North Node. So I am working on personally just redefining my relationship to South Node energy and finding it as a supportive point and not necessarily as a place to abandon ourselves. Yeah. It's all still a part of your story, right?
Absolutely. I just want to share, like, I think I shared that with you, Casey, during our talk at some point, but the South Node and North Node, Rahu and Ketu. So they're very prominent, but they're malefic energies, especially Rahu, which is a North Node in Vedic astrology. and their mythology behind them. There was a dragon that was cut in two and put in the sky. And the head is insatiable and the tail is spiritual. And the purpose is to tie those two energies together, to unite them. Because too much of the head and insane, like Rahu and North Node is how we move in the world. It's how we want to be manifested as in this lifetime as ourselves, how we want to be seen maybe, or what do we want to achieve. It's like, it's very consuming energy, not in a consumerism sense, but in the, I want and I can't get enough of that sense. And South Node, Ketu, is considered to be a spiritual point. It's where you have to kind of rely on to not lose your footing, to kind of not to become this insatiable dragon with a half body, just like eating everything. You know, so like whenever you are, and it can, like for me, for example, I have North Node in, and you could be like, how can you be insatiable? And then like, I have North Node in 12th house in Pisces. And like for the longest time, I completely neglected that Virgo South Node, sort of like, oh, like I'm done being of service in this like very needy, greedy way. I've done it for most of my life. And then you're like, that has been a basis of your spiritual development. Because that Piscean North Node, or whichever North Node you have, without the South Node, doesn't know how to stop. Just
that opposition is so important.
Yeah. But we have to also, like, I'm going to mention this, looking from the other side, people sometimes have a tendency to fall into the South Node completely and neglect their journey forward. And it's like, because it can be convenient and familiar. So just this is about the balancing of this creature in yourself.
We have a good question in the chat about specific activities that are supportive to do during an eclipse, or activities that you maybe should avoid during an eclipse. And I think this is a really great question. I think, especially as witches or ritualists, people who want to cast spells and set intentions in alignment with the moon, it can be challenging to know what to do with an eclipse. Eclipses are like prophetic or revelatory moments, in my opinion. So they're really like showing us something that has been hidden, or something is coming to light that is important for us to take note of or integrate in some way. And I think even just the act of listening and like setting up space to listen and be present with what's coming forward, attuning your presence to the eclipse energies, and not necessarily doing anything. I think sometimes we get really attached to the idea of doing something as like a spell or magic, but just the act of like taking it in, holding space, listening, being present, that as an activity is something that we're less practiced in, and is a really good one to try to develop at eclipses, in my opinion.
I agree. It's the time, first of all, what has been done during the eclipse is very hard to undo. That's the rule of the thumb. And it's better to be an active listener than an active doer during the eclipse time, because these are very it's the hardest thing to predict anything with eclipses. You can predict with Uranus and Pluto transits over someone's chart. With eclipses, it's something we couldn't anticipate. It's something that is in the universe has in store for us, especially if the eclipses touch upon your natal chart placements somehow. It's very, like, whoever tells you that they can tell you what's gonna happen is kind of BS, because it's really like erratic energy. but it's a divinely guided energy. It's sort of like looking at the response more than
Mhm.
else. It's a wise, it's how you respond to this thing. That's what matters during the eclipse. So non-reactionary attitude is highly advised.
Right. And whatever does transpire at an eclipse will probably have lasting consequences, however they unfold. So, relationships that start under an eclipse influence could be very formative, very important for whatever reason. Decisions that are made for you or announcements that come to light, things that kind of create a crossroads for you or in your life. That's going to be a really important timestamp to pay attention to. So it's good to be just conscious of the eclipse and notice how they affect your chart and return to them. See what's rippling out from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And also one helpful thing is to look at your life at the last eclipse when they were at the same signs, nodes of the moon, Aries and Libra. So North Node was in Aries and South Node was in Libra last time, from December 26th of 2004 to June 22nd of 2006. So 2004, the end of the year into the mid of 2006, whatever has been happening in your life, that doesn't mean that the events of those years will repeat, but the lessons, because it's a 18, 19 year cycle, right? Yeah. What have we learned? What have we understood? Have we become more aligned with the placement of Aries and Libra within our chart? It's going to be very, very just try to kind of map or think about the choices that you made or the things that came to you during that time. That's going to be very important. It's and I'm just going to briefly mention this, that North Node in Aries is going to square Pluto in Capricorn on July 22nd and 29th degree, to the critical degree. This assertion of oneself and the governmental restriction and the authority of the whatever whoever is out there being an authority figure in the collective, and the assertion of personal individual power lessons that we want to bring into the reality. They're gonna come into the conflict, but also think about it internally. How do you everything is internal. If we are able to take back power internally, if we're able to recognize what is things within ourselves, they're gonna play so much less in the external. Bring it back to yourself every step of the way with every transit. That's the thing.
That's an important date too over the summer, July 22nd, because not only does the North Node in Aries square Pluto on that date, but we also have Venus going retrograde in Leo on July 22nd. And we wanted to touch on that too as a transit to be mindful of, especially as we're looking at I don't know, I was laughing at this transit being in the summertime in Leo because there's that whole trope of hot girl summer, and when Venus is retrograde, it might feel less
hot or less summer.
So let's talk about that. Venus retrograde.
My God. Venus retrograde. It's as that square is happening, Venus is going retrograde at 28th degree of Leo. So Venus retrogrades, there is a pattern to how they happen. They happen every 8 years in that sign. The Venus retrograde happened, so it's happened 8 years ago, again in Leo, but with Virgo together, but last time Venus was retrograde was 8 years ago in 2015, and before that in 2007. So think about what was happening in your life in the late summer, early fall of 2015 and 2007. What themes might have been prevalent in your life? But I honestly, this Venus retrograde in Leo, a lot of like that. One thing we haven't mentioned and we didn't put it on the list is that Lilith is in Leo for the most part of 2023. And that is kind of, for me, tied to this theme of Lilith in Leo and Venus retrograde in Leo. It is about ability to find, and I've talked about this plenty, I think, sun within, that value, like that creative self, the creative light within oneself. And if Venus retrograde happens, it means that we might have kind of maybe lost touch with that collectively a little bit. We need to find that pleasure in expressing ourselves. All year now, kind of like, I was thinking about this, but even more so now feels to me as that the self, the authentic creative self, and how that authentic creative expressive self applies to the collective. We really have to find that like light and then apply it. So I think Venus retrograde in Leo is really gonna like help us to kind of find joy again, because within the last few years it has been really difficult, and no wonder we've been dimmed in many ways because it has been heavy. And without that light, we're not going to be able to make any changes. I think it's very important.
Yeah, I feel like this could be an amazing, if you're conscious of this Venus retrograde, it could be a really great time to kind of return to old creative outlets or things that brought you joy, things that used to make you feel confident in your ability to be seen or shine. Could be a lot of healing potential there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also Venus is going to be making square to Uranus around August 8th, and then to Jupiter August 21st and September 17th. So here we have, I consider both of this like the whole, let's not fixate on the dates here though, because this is a cycle. We're not expecting a thunderstorm on one day, and then it's just we're going up there, we're riding the wave, we're going down. So we consider the whole Venus retrograde and this planet's influence in this retrograde. So the square to Jupiter and Uranus, so supportive in waking us up into that creative self, into that joy, into finding pleasure by playing. Like the playfulness has to be rediscovered. The childlike energy has to be kind of reawakened. So we're gonna be like shaken into that joy.
Yes. I love Venus and Uranus in combination is so gorgeous. I feel like there's just like firework displays, glitter, crazy outfits, and just unabashedly doing your thing. And it's such a brilliant time to kind of redefine your personal style, you know? That would be a great way to actualize this transit, like clean out your closet.
Totally. And like also Venus is the ruler of the Uranus in this case, because Uranus is in Taurus. And Venus is ruler of Taurus. So here they in communication with each other, kind of, and also like it's, yeah, it's that Venus in Leo is like, it's a style, it's that pampering oneself. And then Uranus in Taurus is doing it differently. Maybe even I would guess not toning it down in the sense of less, but bringing it closer to the earth. So there may be some trends that are very earth rooted, very naturalistic, very like nature supportive, hopefully. New innovative ways fashion industry might go through some kind of revamp, quite likely with this, and especially Jupiter. So maybe there's more sustainable but expressive ways. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. We're redefining hot girl summer, I guess.
We are, yeah. We're like moth girl summer.
Goth girl summer.
I don't know, like I'm thinking about kind of nature creature.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. Just like your favorite animal, summer.
But who?
Just like your favorite animal.
Yeah.
The wild.
Oh yeah, dress. I'm like dress like your favorite animal. That I like that.
Go for it.
It's very exciting, yeah.
Be weird, you know?
Yeah, it's an exciting year, guys. You see, we don't have those Pluto, Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn conjunctions. We don't have Saturn, Uranus squares. We have different set of challenges, but they're more constructive, in my opinion, than destructive in many ways. Some, like, a lot of this is very constructive if we're able to see Uranus in Jupiter in Taurus is about constructive energy coming through finally.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's like more coalition building energy. And also coalition building within yourself. I think we talked a lot about this, but you know, finding ways to embrace your own individual strengths this year and your own individual narrative, your drives, your passions, and seeing where that leads you and seeing who it connects you to in the world.
Yeah. A lot of changes.
Yeah, there's so much room to do so many different types of work.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to get creative.
Don't be afraid. Exactly. With so much Aryan energy and then Venus retrograde in Leo and Lilith in Leo. And I've said this before with Lilith in Leo, don't look for the sun without you. Don't look, it's just not. Don't look for the authority outside of yourself. It's just not going to work together. You are your sun.
Yes.
Someone else's sun.
Yeah, you've talked a lot about this, Mariana, but it's definitely a good year to befriend your sun sign.
Yeah. I like this. There is an astrologer, and I'm completely skipping on, but he's in Russia, but he developed this, not Byzantine, but there's some kind of other old tradition, and he's done tremendous research on that. And he says that according to that astrological, I will share if I remember, I can't remember right now, but I watched his lecture and he said that the 2023 is the year of the sun, according to that astrological tradition. And I think it's beautiful. Hi.
Oh, this was so lovely. Thank you to everyone who has been joining in and asking questions. It was really nice to spend this time with you. I know it's been a really deep dive, and I hope everyone gets a lot out of the recording. There's a lot to chew on. And I would recommend too, you know, if you're wondering, okay, how will Pluto in Aquarius affect me? Pull a card and ask. Really turn to your other tools that can help you make sense of it. Supplement your astrology with your intuition, and then check back in later on and see how that's been reflected for you.
Totally. Yeah, this is
Have fun with it.
lovely. Thank you so much. And for those who will be listening to, yeah, work with your chart, find those placements. These are some potent energies to work with. Align yourself. That's the name of the game. Align yourself with the cosmos.
Yes. Yes, and stay tuned for more deep dives on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.